Good morning, Tariq. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Good morning. I'm Namrata from 2nd BA. Will be the MC for today's session on how to crack UPSC. Every morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters the most, says Buddha. This Buddha's quote is not only applicable to the journey of your life, but also our exam preparations. Realize the power of now. Make the most out of our present. If you failed to study yesterday,
Good
don't
morning.
get carried away with that disappointment. Start every day fresh and start studying and focus every day. Civil service is one of the greatest way to serve our country. It needs a lot of dedication and hard work.
Dear students and a resource person, there's some technical problem. Kindly bear with us and wait for some time. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Am I audible?
Yes, Namrata, you're
Yes,
audible.
Namrata, you're audible.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Namrata from 2nd BA. Will be the MC of today's session on how to crack UPSC. Every morning we are born again. What we do today is what. Excuse me. I'm audible, right?
Yes, Namrata, you're
Yes.
audible.
Okay. Civil service is one of the greatest way to serve our country. It needs a lot of dedication and hard work. A lot of us aim at serving our country as a civil servant. Thousands of people every year prepare, aspire to be civil servant, but only few are able to achieve that dream. We have today one such officer, Sri Srinivas Kauda IPS, Superintendent of Police, Hassan District, to guide us and prepare us for civil service. I request Associate Professor Farida Gobias ma'am to heartily welcome our resource person. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning and a warm welcome to all of you gathered in this platform. It's our privilege to have with us this morning for this interactive session as our resource person, Mr. Srinivas Gowda, IPS, Superintendent of Police, Hassan District. Sir, on behalf of School of Social Work Roshni Nilaya, the UG Department of Criminology and IQAC, we warmly welcome you, sir. We welcome our principal, Dr. Juliet CJ, the head of the Department of Criminology, Ms. Sarik Ankita, Assistant Professor, Department of Criminology, Ms. Amrita Shetty, IT Coordinator and Dean of Administration, Dr. Kiran Prasad, to this webinar. And to you, my dear students, a hearty welcome, who have joined most eagerly to listen to your session, sir. Once again, on behalf of the School of Social Work, Roshni Nilaya, and UG Department of Criminology, I heartily welcome all of you to this interactive session.
Thank you, ma'am. I now request Dr. Juliet CJ, our beloved principal, to give a presidential address. Is she not there in the meeting, ma'am?
That's what I'm checking.
Okay.
Yes, could we have our resource person speaking? Then later on our principal can join. Maybe there's some technical problem. Without much delay, Namrata, can you ask our resource person to start the session?
Yes, ma'am, yes. I now request our guest speaker, Mr. Srinivas Kauda, to address the civil service aspirants.
Thank you, Namrata. A very good morning to one and all. I would like to thank Sarik for inviting me to this session, and also Juliet ma'am and Farida ma'am for welcoming me to this seminar. And yes, civil service aspirants, I think everyone are here who are in this seminar right now are civil service aspirants. I don't know the age group or which course you are taking as of now. Can I have a rough idea like to which age group people I'm speaking to here?
18 to 21, sir. Degree, first year, second year, and final year.
Okay. May I know like how many of them want to take civil services very seriously? Like this is the first question I would like to ask everyone, because I've seen a lot of members want to do civil service, but in the halfway they would like to quit because they feel it is a very difficult thing, it's a challenging thing. Many people will be not so serious about civil services, and many people for the pressure of parents or other peer pressures, they want to take civil services. But I hope everyone in this group are really eager to prepare for civil services. And on that note, I would be like to continue this seminar. Does anyone have any brief idea about how the civil service entrance exams take place? Like anyone can join and just tell me the about the civil service, whatever you people know. I think Namrata, you can start if you feel like.
The exams, they'll be having a lot of subjects like logistics, maths, arithmetics, and a lot of subjects.
Okay, anyone else? I don't want to be it a monologue, so I just want to interact with you more. So anyone can just, if they have any idea about how things are in civil services, the pattern of examination, they can just share whatever they know.
So basically UPSC exam has 3 stages. First is prelims, then it's mains, and then it's personality test. So there are certain qualifications. So based on that, we get selected.
Okay, fine. At least I think Angel is speaking. Yeah, there is 3 stages in the UPSC preparation. The first stage is the preliminary examinations, which contains again 2 papers, GS1 and GS2, General Science 1 and General Science 2. General Science 1 is all about, it contains every current affairs, history, polity, geography, economics, everything it will be covered in GS1, and GS2 is basically about aptitude. So GS2 is a qualifying paper. However, GS1 paper, it will be a scoring paper, and both the papers will be MCQs. So this is the first stage of examination. Usually each paper will be of 200 marks. There will be negative marking. There will be 100 questions each. In the second paper, you need to get 1/3 for qualifying. In the first paper, whatever you score, depending on the cutoff, you will be selected. Now, how the cutoff will be determined? For example, if that year the number of posts is 1000 allocated for UPSC civil services examination, be it IAS, IPS, IFS, central services, whatever it is. If there are total of 1000 posts, then to the personality test, 1:3 ratio. That is 3000 people will be selected for the personality test. Again, 1:5 ratio from the personality test point of view. It will be 15,000 members who will be qualified for the mains examination. So 15,000 usually. And what is the number of applicants to the preliminary examination? It will be roughly around 4 lakh to 5 lakh. It will be a variation between 4 lakh to 5 lakh. So every year, if there is 1000 posts, 4 lakh to 5 lakhs people will apply for UPSC examination. In the preliminary examination, 15,000 people will qualify for the mains examination, which will be written examination. It is not MCQ. MCQ is only prelims. So mains will be completely written examination. After mains, 3,000 people will be selected for personality test. In that 3,000, 1,000 will be finally, they will be selected for the UPSC exams and they will be clearing it. So now this is the overall pattern of how many people will apply and what is the competition. You can see by these numbers. And as Angel has said, after preliminary examination, there will be mains examination. Mains examination, there will be 1 essay paper, 4 general studies papers, and there will be optional papers and qualifying English and 1 regional language papers. So I would request each and every person who was in this seminar, just go to UPSC website, Google UPSC website, go to the UPSC website, download the pattern of examination, which will be present in the website. And also there will be syllabus copy, which will also be mentioned in the UPSC website. Everyone just go to the UPSC website, download the exam pattern PDF and also syllabus PDF. Then go through it. That is when you will understand the depth of UPSC examination. Unless and until you go to the website, you won't be knowing completely what it is. Even any resource person or any senior or anyone, they can't guide you completely. It is your own self efforts of seeing things, seeking things that will fetch you good results. So first thing, make sure you people are going to visit UPSC website. Now, like as I told, there will be different vast variety of subjects. For example, current affairs. There will be a lot of current affairs question. How to read, what to read. There is a general confusion and common questions asked by many of the persons who will be liking to prepare for UPSC. See, you need to cultivate the habit of reading newspapers. You have to read newspapers every day, at least 1 newspaper to start with. So that 1 newspaper, whatever you read, maybe it might be Hindu, or it might be Indian Express, or it might be Times, anything is fine. But you start reading newspaper. Never leave that habit of reading newspaper, and you have to read it every day without fail. And what to read in newspaper? Every newspaper will be bulky, and usually the common question is what to pick, what to select. See, initial days, you won't be knowing what to select and read. It will be difficult to be a selective reader in the initial days because you don't know what is the pattern, what kind of attitude the UPSC is looking in you, and what kinds of question they are targeting. So in the initial days, you will keep on reading newspaper. It will take 2 hours, 2.5 hours at times. So you will be like feeling burdened. Is it required to read this newspaper? Once you get the grasp of UPSC preparation, you will become a crisp reader. Your reading time will reduce from 2.5 hours, the same newspaper. It will reduce to just 40 minutes or 30 minutes max. That comes over time. So reading newspaper, they usually the headlines that will be important. Related to country, international affairs, related to any new schemes of the government, related to any women issues. So these kinds of main issues will be there, which you have to target and do selective reading. You need not read about crimes. You need not read about everyday going on political things. You need not read about film things or whatever other entertainment things are there in the newspaper. So you can just straight away skip it. In the sports column also, there will be a lot of things, but you need not read everything. Some new technology introduced in sports, some centenary kinds of activities, those kinds of things, you just can read it and you can make a note of it. You might ask, for example, sir, there might be Palestine-Israel issue. Is it required for me? No, that is exactly, that won't be required for you, Palestine and Israel issue. But how their issue will affect Indian relationship with those countries, that will matter. For example, India might take the side of Palestine. How that move will affect India's bilateral ties with Israel. That will be the point you need to catch. You might then ask me, sir, okay, fine. Israel-Palestine issue is an ongoing issue. It will continue, keep on continuing for the months together. That is when you need to be a smart reader. There are some current affairs books, like for example, Vision IAS books, Vision IAS current affairs, monthly editions. What they do is that every month, whatever is that one issue, Israel and Palestine on for continuously. Vision IAS will make sure that entire month's activities of Israel-Palestine conflict, they will make it as a crisp and brief note into 2 or 3 pages, and they would have given it with the perspective of India's relationship with that and also world angle. So then you can just read that, you will get to know what is happening. So you need not follow it on a daily basis. You can just pick up some magazine where they would have condensed it into a 2-3 note, the entire month's episode. So that is how you have to start reading. And basic general studies, whatever I told for preliminaries, GS1, that is general studies 1, and also for mains examination, paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, paper 4 general studies, you might be requiring to read some basic concepts and basic subjects and materials. For example, that will be NCERT. NCERT books of 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th standard, history, geography, politics, culture, economics. This will be very important for you to start with. If you people require those materials, it will be available online also. Art copies also will be available. You just have to pick and start reading from now. And one advice to everyone, I made a mistake of, I knew I wanted to be a civil servant when I was in at least 3rd year engineering or 4th year engineering, but I never put in the efforts. It is only after my 4th year engineering, then I got selected to a few companies. Then I decided I don't want to go to the companies. Then I decided I will study for civil service. That is like, I wasted almost 1.5 years. Even though I knew I wanted to study for civil service. So I don't want you people to do the same mistake. If you people are so sure that you are going to attempt UPSC, then I would like you people to sit and start studying NCERT books, newspaper, right from today as a ritual. Whatever efforts you put in for this 1.5 years before you complete your degrees or everything or whatever it is, your basics foundation will be so strong. Once you start studying for civil service and actually read the core materials, it will be a very easy thing. It will be a cakewalk for you people. Then, when I entered UPSC civil service preparation, when I started taking coaching and all, it was very difficult for me to understand and catch it. Even the basics I had forgotten. For example, geography concepts whichever were there. The last time I studied geography was in 10th standard. So I'd completely forgotten all the basics itself. And once I started preparing, it was a difficult thing for me because I have to start from the scratch. Because I used to see the competition, I used to see my peer group, I used to see my seniors, they're already there. Their mode of preparation was high and their standard of preparations was so high. So that will create some kind of doubt in your mind. Oh, competition is there. There's such a lot of competition. Can I make it? That kind of question will haunt you for days. But once you are well versed with the subjects, once you start preparing seriously, you have done repeated readings, repeated revisions, that confidence you will gain. But I wasted 1 year then. But I don't want you people to do the same mistake. If you are so serious about it, I think today is the day. I don't even say tomorrow, right from today. Now you can ask me the question, sir, we are having our degree exams, we need to do our degree. So how can we make in time for UPSC? See, I'm not telling you people to study for 6 hours or something like that. Give 1 hour time for newspaper and 1 hour or 1.5 hours for NCERT basic books. Your foundation will be very strong. And what about mains? Mains again, it is extensive reading and repeated readings that will always make you every day. You feel burdened in the initial days looking at the vast, enormous syllabus. But trust me, once you start reading it repeatedly, everything will be a cakewalk. And answer writing skills, it will be there only once you have having a hold on the subjects. Once you have enough knowledge to answer these questions, then you can write anything easily without any kind of fear. Because many people say, sir, prelims suge od budbodu, we can study for prelims easily, but mains is answer writing and it's a subjective thing. How to go about it? All I say is, if you have a good amount of knowledge about that subject, you can write any question, you can answer any question. So you need not worry about it. First, increase your knowledge base. That is the most and foremost important thing. You have to study, you have to improve your knowledge base about every subject. Be it current affairs, be it international relations, be it culture, be it art, be it polity, political science, history, whatever it is, you need to have a hold on the subject, enough knowledge on the subject to answer any kinds of question. So I don't want to discuss more about mains and personality test for the only reason it is too premature for me to speak about it. Even if I speak, it won't make sense. I can just give a brief idea, but I will give at the end of the session. But I want you people to ask more questions as to what doubts you have or what all questions are there in your mind. You people just ask me the questions, I will answer it. Anyone can start with asking the questions.
Sir, how do we prepare for the interview, the mock test? How do we prepare for that?
And that is exactly what I told. Okay, fine. Since you are asking, I will answer this. See, personality test is a different ball game altogether. Your prelims, mains, after you clear these two, you will be selected to the personality test. There will be a board. There will be at least 6 to 7 members who are all retired officials or some people who have done good works in other fields and all. So there will be something called as you would have actually given your details to the UPSC, your interest, your hobbies. You would have written everything into it, and you would have submitted it beforehand during the mains examination itself. You would have submitted. So usually they will start asking about whatever you have sent, the details you have given to them. So they might ask about your interest. For example, if your interest is like music, Carnatic music or classical music, they might ask questions on that. What is Hindustani? What is Gharanas? So if you are told you are well versed with Carnatic music, they might ask many things about them. Or you might have written you are a good painter. So they might ask anything related to painting, what kind of painting you like, oil painting or watercolors. So depending on whatever you have given, they will be questioning you. And they might question on other things also, social issues. For example, uh, today GST related, it is a hot topic. So they might ask about GST, whether it is working fine, whether the tax collections are good in GST, whether the states are getting their share or there is any problem. So the current affairs topic, they might ask you in the personality test, or they might ask you about your own CV, whatever you given to them. They might question on that, or they might question you randomly also. For example, I will tell my own experience. The moment I had been to the personality test interview boardroom, the first question they asked me is about where are you from? I told I am from Bangalore. The next question they asked me is, which is the famous thing in Bangalore? I told, sir, Lal Bagh, Kabban Park, Vidhan Saudha, many things are there, sir. They immediately asked me, okay, just if you enter the west gate of Lal Bagh, there's a statue. Do you know which statue or whose statue it is? Now I didn't know that that person who is sitting in the board is so well versed and is so having a lot of knowledge about Bangalore and Lal Bagh and all. So randomly asked, if you enter the west gate of Lal Bagh, whose statue it is? I can't lie. You can't bluff them. That is one thing they hate the most. You shouldn't bluff. If you don't know, the answer should be you don't know. You can't bluff and all. Now they might be testing you also. Even they might not be knowing there's a statue or not. They just want to know how I will face that question, because they are doing a stress interview at that time. They want to assess whether asking these kinds of questions, which no one will be knowing, whether the person candidate will be stressed out and whether he will be handle it or not. So that person, whoever asked the question, he asked me, as soon as you enter the west gate of Lal Bagh, there's a statue. Whose statue it is? I told, sir, sorry, sir, I don't know whose statue it is. Now, after the interview was over, after I came outside the room, then I just Googled, why did he ask about that particular statue? It is a random question. Why did he ask about? Then I came to know that in Lal Bagh, West Gate, one Marie Gowda statue is there. I didn't know this. This Marie Gowda statue, why he had particularly asked, I just thought of analyzing for myself. My name is Srinivas Gowda. He has seen my name Gowda in it. And that particular year, just a week before, centenary celebrations of Marie Gowda has happened. Why it has happened? He is called as a father of horticulture of India. See, that deep knowledge they will be having. Then I could relate. My name is Gowda. I am from Bangalore. So just 1 week prior to it, centenary celebrations of Marie Gowda, who is known as the father of horticulture of India, has taken place. That is the reason he has asked that question. It is a current affairs kind of thing. So this is how they relate. For example, Namrata, you are from Mangalore. If you are from Mangalore, the next question will be like, it might be about the communal tensions in Mangalore, why it happens like that, or it might be about the NMPT port which is there in Mangalore, or it might be about any religious place in Mangalore. Why is Mangalore famous for? Or it might be what are the difficulties faced by fishermen in Mangalore. If you are from Mangalore, they would like to know that you are having certain amount of knowledge about the place you have come from. So that is how interview will be taken place. It might be current affairs, or it might be about your personality itself, or it might be about your hometown, or it might be anything. They can ask anything. And usually the personality test will go on from 20 to 25 minutes, and it will be a very good interactive session. So anyone wants to know any more things?
So there is questions in the chat box.
Okay. This question, whatever Aisha Shahama has asked, it is India is supposed to remain neutral at this time, right? It is related to colonialism. See, these kinds of question you can answer in UPSC mains exam. It is your view, the way you view. For example, they would have asked a question in the mains examination. What is the India stance? What might be the India stand? Whether the stand taken by India is right or wrong. It is always, it is nothing called as idam mitam. It is the only thing, or it is the actual solution. There is nothing called as that. It is always about your personal views and how are you going to justify your views. UPSC is all about you being straightforward, and once you're straightforward, how do you justify that? So now if I am supporting Israel, I should give reasons why I support Israel. I'm least bothered about colonialism or anything else. I would like to see India in a world's perspective. What are the benefits Israel is making to India? What are the ties between Israel and India? Now the question might be, okay, if I support Israel, in the same answer, I would also like to write the cons also. Now, if I support Israel, now the Arab world might be against India and we import most of our oil from Arab world. So now how to balance it? So it will be always a give and take policy kind of thing, and writing the answer in a neutral perspective will be good, but not all the answers will be having a neutral perspective. Now Israel and Palestine conflict, for example. Now if you are going to say, we have to have a good ties with Israel, we have to have a good ties with Palestine. How do you handle it? It's a great question mark, and it is left to the leaders how they handle it. So what I'm giving to trying to tell is, what perspective I'm going to tell is, whatever is the issue, you always have to have a holistic approach to that. You need to know both the pros and cons of any issue, and you need to put forth your opinion and justify that opinion. Like Aisha Shahanama has asked, what is India's stand or whether it to be neutral? Fine, India should be neutral. How to be neutral also you should be mentioning in the answers. India has a lot of defense related ties with Israel, and we have to have a good relationship with Israel, and we have to make good relationship with Israel through that defense ties, giving more defense projects or having more visits to Israel or whatever it is. And how to handle Palestine. Now there are some forums in the world of geopolitics where India supported Palestine, sometimes voted, sometimes didn't appear for voting itself. So you need to read the history of what has happened from the conflict times. Then you will get, then you will be knowing what is actually happening and what answer you can write to it. So it is always, as I said, it will be your perspective and your opinion and how you justify it. If you ask me about Israel and Palestine, I would say we need to have good ties with both of them because both are required for us. How to go about it? It is how you justify it. Any other questions?
So one
So-
more question.
Yeah, please tell me.
Yeah, Aisha, go on.
Okay, thank you. So, sir, how many subjects are there in IAS prelims?
As I told, there is nothing called as subjects. All kinds of topics will be there in prelims. For example, there might be chemistry, there might be physics, there might be questions on biology, art, culture, environment, political science, Indian polity, constitution, about history, geography, economics. It can be anything, Aisha.
So, but sir, when I Googled it, I just got an answer saying that there are like 9 subjects in IAS prelims, and which like most of them comes under the science background. So it would be like relatively difficult for art student to answer one paper from that because the majority of the subjects are of science.
Aisha, as I told you, preliminary has two papers. One is General Studies 1 and General Studies 2. General Studies 1 is about all the subjects. It will cover everything and everyone has to put in the same efforts. There is nothing called as arts or science, or it will be difficult for arts. Many of the arts people are today IAS and IPS and IRS, whatnot. So it is all about you putting the efforts. That is the reason I said don't wait for you to complete your degree. You have to start from day one. For example, now you might say, sir, there are few subjects. For example, history, geography, or political science, or everything is art subject. It might be beneficial to you. I am from an engineering background. I don't have any idea about history, geography, polity because it is art subject. But still, I could clear because I have to read it. Whatever said and done. Yes, arts people will face difficulty in paper 2. That is general studies paper 2, which will be of quantitative analysis and aptitude test. So in that aptitude test, you people might not be good in maths, or you people might have forgotten some aspects of mathematics. So it might be difficult for you, but again, you have to study, you have to practice, you have to clear, and it is just a qualifying subject. Do you have any more
Okay.
doubts?
Sir, I have a question regarding the police officers who get transferred like 3 to 4 months. The problem is they come to one city, and even before taking any action, like they might be knowing the area very well. They might be knowing who might the culprit be. They'll have a doubt of certain places. Before they take an action against that place, they might get transferred. So how is it fair, sir? Like what can be done? That's the fear most of us have. Like, what if we get transferred? What if we can't take actions?
Namrata, you are signing in knowing the system. So you can never say that we are being bullied or we are being targeted or anything as such. You are coming to a system which is already established, and transfer is a part of the system. Transfers might happen for any reason. It might happen for a personal reason, it might happen for a professional reason, or some kind of pressure or anything. But once you have entered civil service, it means that you have entered civil service knowing all the pros and cons, and there's no going back. So you shouldn't blame about the system. Whatever it is, you need to be there. So again, as you told, for every 3 months they will be transferred. See, there might be n number of reasons. You might be not knowing the exact reasons, but that is what we have signed up for. We know everything, and we have come here to serve. Whether they transfer for 3 months or after 3 years, it doesn't matter. Wherever you are going, you have to go, you have to serve. That is your only motto and nothing else. And not always like, see, there's a misconception about things like all officers are very good. No, there are black sheeps in all the fields. There are some pressures in all the fields. Even if you go to a corporate sector, even if you go to some software IT companies, they will be having their own politics. The manager might be giving importance to some person, the manager might be giving appraisals to some person, promotions to some person, the hard workers would be left out. See, any field for that matter has its own internal politics, it has its own internal pros and cons, so that shouldn't deter you from entering civil service. That is what I would like to say. No, I would
Sir,
like, yeah, please tell me.
sir, who has a right to remove a civil servant from their post?
See, the constitution has given some amount of protection to all the civil servants. It is not so easy for any civil servant to be removed. There is something called as departmental inquiries, internal inquiries. There is something called as administrative tribunals where you can appeal against their decisions. So it is not so easy. And if at all they have to be removed, it should be from the government top-notch level. And that too after the due process of law.
Uh, Sir, there are basically a lot of myths relating to UPSC exams. Basically, they talk like if you have to crack a UPSC exams, they will even test your intelligence. You'll have to spend your 16 to 18 hours of your day only studying for the preparations of UPSC. Is it like true?
See, Aradhana, I have seen many people in my life where they have cleared the exams. I have seen 21 years old clearing the exam. I have seen 35-year-old clearing the exam. I have seen people clearing in the first attempt, people clearing in their last seventh attempt. I have seen people who don't even know English clearing these exams. I have seen the best of the best minds, IITians or IIMs, people not clearing these exams. So this exam is not like it depends purely on your intelligence or it depends purely on your hard work. See, this exam is all about your outlook towards the exam. This exam will test your intelligence also. You require some amount of hard work also, but most probably it is more of smart work. How you study, what you study, how much you study, what is required for this exam. For example, now there is some history books which are so huge and bulky. Do you require to read everything in that? No. You need to know the basic understanding of the concept. For example, now the third battle of Panipat. In this third battle of Panipat, they won't ask who fought amongst whom. They are least bothered about the date or time or whatever or whenever it happened. They will ask the importance of Battle of Panipat, why it is important. That amount of conceptual clarity if you're having, it's enough for you. Now they are going to ask about earthquake. They don't want you to know exactly when and where the earthquake has taken place, when and where a volcano has erupted. They're least bothered, but they want to know the conceptual clarity, why that earthquake is happening, how cyclones happen, what is the reason for intermittent cyclones, what is the reason for the increase in cyclones, cyclonic activities that are taking place, why monsoon is disturbed, why monsoon is affected. Regularly we used to see monsoon taking place for this time to this time, but now there is a delay in monsoon, there is advancement in monsoon, there is weakness in monsoon. Once 3 or 4 years the monsoon will be very weak, then again it will be very high. So they are trying to understand the conceptual clarity on clarity you people are having on any topic. So as I said, you require minimum amount of hard work put into UPSC exams. Some people might study for 8 hours. It is their capacity and capability. Some people might study the same subjects what you are studying in 4 hours. It depends on you again. And some people during their interviews, they say we used to study for 20 hours, 18 hours, 16 hours. See, I don't say those things. I don't believe in those things also, because we are not machines. We are human beings. Yeah, we put in certain amount of hard work. We used to sit and study for minimum 7 to 8 hours or 6 hours. It is required for sure. Every day, 6 to 7 or 8 hours is required. Just a week before the exams or 10 days before the exams, we will extend it to 12 or 13 or 14 hours. But every day we can't carry the same amount of tempo. Even we are human beings, even we require some mental peace, even we require some kind of entertainment. So everything is required, everything, it is all about how you balance. I know some people who used to go to work and they have cleared the exams. I know some people who sat 24/7 and they couldn't clear the exams. So what I'm trying to say is, it all depends on that particular individuals. For me, for example, I knew I can't sit and study for more than 8 hours. I know I could sit and study for 8 hours in a day. So I used to make sure that at least for 7 to 8 hours or 6 to 7 hours, every day I used to study. Sometimes I used to play games in mobile. Sometimes I used to go watch movie. Sometimes I used to discuss things with my peer group. We used to have arguments. We used to have a good sharing of knowledge. about every subject. We used to do answer writing practice or something. So each and every individual will be knowing what is his strengths and weakness. Based on that, they will start preparing. Now you can ask me, sir, how did some people clear by going to the job, work, whatever it is? See, it is their capacity. Whatever I can read and study and understand in 8 hours, the same person can do it in 2 hours. It depends on his IQ. So we can't blame it, or we can't compare ourselves with some other person. Like he is able to do it in 2 hours, reading the same things in 2 hours. He is having that conceptual clarity in 2 hours, but I'm putting in 4-5 hours for the same thing. No, each and every individual is different, and each and every individual capacity to understand and comprehend things is different. So it is always you assess yourself, don't compare with others. So you know how much hours you can sit and study, how much efforts you can put in. So based on that, you go about. Some people used to sit and write for them to remember and recall things. I never used to sit and do answer writing, or I used to write the same things again and again. I used to just mark in the same textbook or whatever it is. I used to read that itself. So every individual is different. So based on your strengths and weaknesses, you assess yourself and you start preparing.
So they say if you're very good at academics, like if you're excellent in that, only then you can clear UPSC exams.
As I told Aisha, I've seen many IIM people who actually called as very intelligent people also failing in these exams. I've seen just pass 50%, 60% people also clear in these exams. So as I said, it is nothing to do with intelligence alone. You have to do a smart work. You just have to be a smart person. You need to put in some minimum amount of effort, and you need to understand and grasp the pulse of UPSC as soon as possible for you to start preparing and clearing this exam. You need to understand the pulse of UPSC. That is the foremost important thing. What questions they might ask. How is UPSC analyzing people? That, how do you come to know about that? You need to sit and read their question papers. You need to just go through their question papers. I don't, some people will advise go read 20 years, 30 years. No, that's not required. There are so many coaching centers. Every coaching centers are conducting mock prelims test. Their question papers will be available. The previous 2-3 years question papers of UPSC exams will be available. Just you need to see the trend, in what trend they are asking the questions, whether they are asking about current affairs more, whether they are asking about the regular subjects more, whether they are asking in-depth things, or whether they're asking just surface level things about some topics. For example, I would like to say, there was one question when I attempted the prelims. There was one question about semiconductors. They had given 8 items, and they had given ABCD option. Out of these 8 items, 1 to 7 are semiconductors, 1 to 4 are semiconductors, 1 to 3 are semiconductors. None of these are semiconductors. Now I have to pick. So now I have to know in-depth knowledge about which of semiconductors and not semiconductors. So some questions will be like in-depth, and those questions you can ignore, you can leave it, because you should be knowing this, that out of 4 lakhs people who are attending that question, only 100 to 200 or 300 members would have answered that questions. Rest everyone would have left that question also. So it is a equal ground for everyone. So even attempting and answering a questions is also an art in UPSC. But there are some questions which will be dead easy. It will be very easy questions, straight away questions from the textbooks. They would have just lifted it and put it in there. Those questions you should answer, you must answer. So if there is 100 questions, there will be 10 questions where no one will be knowing the answers. there will be 40 questions where everyone will be knowing the answers, including you. And there will be another set of 50 questions, which is going to decide whether you will be in or out. These 50 questions depend on how much knowledge you have amassed, how much conceptual clarity you are having. These 50 questions will decide your fate of you, whether you will pass or not. So these 40 questions you must answer because it is dead easy and everyone will be knowing the answer. You must answer these 40 questions without fail. Another 10 questions, you can straight away leave those 10 questions because rest assured, more than 90% wouldn't have attempted that question. So you are having a level playing field where the others also have not attempted, you are also not attempted. So you people are well in the same range. The next 50 questions will decide your fate, and these 50 questions will be tricky. If you have a good conceptual clarity, you can attend these 50 questions.
Sir, about mains exam, it's descriptive exams, paper writing, right? So how to make our answers creative in that? Most of the people face difficulty in that paper.
Whatever you told about mains, it is like writing the answers, it's not MCQs. In this descriptive kind of questions, for example, if they are going to ask about what was the role of women during Harappan civilization, you need to know about the Harappan civilization first. You need to know at least few things about Harappan civilization first. That is when you can answer that question. So any question in mains, it depends on the amount of knowledge, amount of study, amount of repeated readings and revisions you have done. That will decide your answer writing skills for mains. So as I told, it will be very premature for me to tell each and everything, because you people have to start reading the basic books like the NCERT books. Then only you can understand in a much better way. 1 minute. 2 minutes, I'll take a call and I'll just get there.
Students, please ask questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Why you all are not asking anything? How was the session?
It's interesting, ma'am.
No, I'm in my opinion. Okay. Sorry, I have to take this call. So, any more questions?
So it's always
Okay, one person named as okay, I think Angel asked one more, how to write a creative answer. Okay, I will tell my own experience. During the mains examination, it should be like usually some people will prefer to write in paragraphs. Some people would like to put in bullet points. Some people will mix paragraph and bullet points. And I used to be a person who used to write for some answer where I'm really sure that this is the answer for this question. I used to write in bullet points so that it will make an immediate impact on that person whoever is correcting my questions. Some questions wherein I was I was having a little doubt about that question, or I'm not knowing the entire complete answers. I used to prefer writing in paragraph so that I can explain myself in a much better manner to that person. And sometimes some questions where there is, they would have asked your opinions, or they would have like asked you to elaborate on those issues and all. I used to mix some paragraph and also some amount of bullet points into it. sometimes if there is any differences or comparisons to be made, I would have used to split it into the page into two parts, and I used to compare and write it. And some questions, for example, in geography related questions and all, I used to write the map, world map, and like a brief sketch and a rough sketch I used to write, and I used to mark some things. So it is always like you need to know about the subject before you are writing any answers. That is what is a basic thing. So your answers might be creative. In one of the question which was related to history about some artwork, then I did the drawing, and it was weird for some people. Some people laughed at me, who will draw things and show them, but it was my way of putting things across. So you can be more creative, you can select the way you can write. So it depends on you, like it depends on your answer writing skills basically. One more thing I would like to point out. See, while you are writing the answers, for example, each mains paper will be for 250 marks. When it is for 250 marks, the first and foremost things is you have to write all these questions. You need to answer all these questions. You can't leave them. If you even leave one question, means you are going away from the race. So at any cost, you shouldn't leave any questions in mains examination unless and until you don't know the answer at all. Not even 0.1% you don't know the answer to that question, you can completely skip. Otherwise, whatever it is, you have to answer everything. And mark this, there might be 25 questions, 10 marks is 250 marks, 3 hours time. So roughly we'll get 7.5 minutes to answer one question. 7.5 minutes, you have to write at least 2 pages about that particular question, whatever they have asked. In 7.5 minutes, your thought process should run. Again, you have to put it, there should be a fast handwriting. Everything counts there. So only practice can make you perfect in that mains examination. You have to sit and practice. And first and foremost thing, you have to sit for 6 hours. Because there will be 2 papers each in a day. So you will be answering for 500 marks in a day, 6 hours of time. So that much amount of practice you should be having before you come and sit in the mains examination. So at least during your preparation time, you should have self-tested yourself by joining some classes or some test series or whatever it is. Make sure you are going to practice answer writing before even attempting your real attempt. Any other doubts?
So, good morning, sir. Other than the being motivated part, do you think coaching centers help in providing knowledge or any other ways?
Nikita, I'm sorry to say this. Do you think you will be really motivated by others? Okay, I will tell my own example. I used to be very much motivated by seeing other officers, but strictly speaking, that motivation would be just for 2 or 3 days.
Yes, sir.
After that, there won't be any motivation. It should always be a self-motivation. See, if you are seeing a thing, it is all about emotions. If you're seeing an IAS officer, they are writing good things about it. She comes and addresses you. She will talk big about it. IPS officer will come and address you. We will talk big things about policing and all. You get that momentary joy. You get that emotional push, and you will be happy. You will be that vigor. Everything will be there. You will be pumped up, you will be motivated, but it will stay for only 3 days max. After that, it is always about self-motivation and about yourself. You have to push yourself because there are days when you will get really depressed. For example, when I was studying for 2 years straight for UPSC examination, when I see Facebook or WhatsApp, my friends putting things, updating things about how they are enjoying life after getting into some software domain. They are enjoying life, they're getting married, whatnot. And what am I doing? I'm sitting in the house and studying for 2 years, and still I'm not able to clear my exams. First time I couldn't clear my prelims. Second time I went up to personality test, but I was not in the rank list. Then I had to start from scratch. In my third attempt, I got 105 ranking. But every time when you write the exam and if you fail, you have to sit for 1 year. That will be the most horrible time period, and you will go through a lot of emotions. So whatever motivation, everything, and I used to see some YouTube motivational videos, and I used to get pumped up. For another 1 day, I would be having that josh, and the next day the josh would have come down, and again it will be back to square one. It is always about your mindset. It is always about how emotionally you are going to get stronger day by day preparing for this exam. How you are going to self-motivate, how your parents or your friends support you, whose company you are in, and how you keep yourself motivated and steady for this exam. That matters the most.
Yes. But I was thinking, when you go to coaching centers, you're surrounded by people who have the same goal as you, right, sir? So I was assuming that would help us to
Okay.
stay.
I've been to Delhi. Okay. At 10:30, I went to this Rajendra Nagar Street. It is a hub of UPSC aspirants. There are at least 100 coaching centers in that road. At 10:30, almost everyone used to come out of their classes. It would be like you can see lakhs together standing in that road itself, preparing for UPSC. That is where you stand. That is the amount of competition you get to know, and you will realize the reality about the competition. And many people are so intelligent, they will be boasting, they will be talking about many concepts, their conceptual clarity. You will feel inferior too. But that shouldn't be a kind of demotivation to you. It should otherwise pump you to study more, read more, understand more, discuss more.
Yes.
That should actually pump you. And coaching centers per se, it is like for example, if you are so confident you can sit at home and study, you are having that much of ability, it's well and you can sit at home and study. And many people have cracked exams by being self-dependent and not going to any coaching centers. But I had been to a coaching because I didn't have any idea about economics and political science, and I didn't have any idea about geography, because I had lost the touch. I took coaching only for these three subjects: economics, geography, and polity. Other subjects I didn't feel like attending, because history and all, I thought I can read it myself. I need not want any conceptual clarity, or current affairs didn't require any help, I thought. So I wanted conceptual clarity in economics. I had been to the coaching. Now you might ask, is it really required to go to the coaching? Now again, it depends on the individual. You might require, because your understanding of concepts might not be so good as the other person. So you might require some guru, or you might require some teacher or some person to help you understand it in a much more easier and efficient way, in a less time consuming manner. So coaching center is all about making you understand the things, provided you are very alert, your concentration is too good in class. That will help you to reduce the time of preparation. So coaching centers' role is to reduce the time of preparations, because they are going to make it easy for you. What is to be read, how much to be read, they would have given you enough material. Though that is the one pros of coaching centers.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, one more question. So we actually know, like, before, like, how to crack, like, how can we crack our UPSC exams? But what next? What is the next procedure after cracking UPSC exams?
See, once you crack the UPSC exams, all the three stages, then depending on rank, you would be allotted one service. That service will be allotted to you based on the priority that you are given. You would have filled during your examinations. They would have asked, what's your priority? Whether you want IPS second, IPS second, or IRS. So you would have given a priority list. Then based on your rank, you would be allotted one service. After being allotted to service, you will be there'll be a basic training course. Then you will be having a regular your training course. For example, if an IPS, if you are an IPS, then you are as a probationer, you will be sent to National Police Academy in Hyderabad. If you become an IAS, you will be sent to Labasna in Mussoorie. So there will be that training program for 1.5 years, 2 years. Then you will be put into the job.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, Mahesh, please tell me.
So what are the advantages in all aspects of life being an IAS or an IPS officer when compared to being in a regular job? Because last year about 10.5 lakh candidates appeared for the UPSC preliminary exams. So what is that they see in being a civil servant?
See, there is no prescribed qualities of you being a civil servant per se. There's nothing called as you require this quality to appear for civil service, or they're going to see this quality in you and going to give the job. No. Prelims is highly objective, mains is highly subjective, personality test is highly subjective. You clear, you will be cleared. And why many people are applying for civil service? Because it is a nice job to serve. It will give you a lot of exposure. It will introduce into the system in a much more effective manner. Being an outsider, you don't know exactly what's happening in the system, and you will be having powers to help the needy, or you can serve. See, it is all about if you compare myself with some other software person, excuse me. Okay, I will compare myself with my friend. My friend and me, we used to, we got the same job in engineering to placements. I opted civil service preparation. He went ahead with the job, and today he is in the US. He is earning around 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs or whatever it is. I am earning very less, but in the amount of satisfaction, he is satisfied with his own job or whatever he is doing. I am really satisfied with what I am doing. I might not be earning as much as he is earning, but I'm really happy with what I'm doing. So it is each and every individual thinking differs from one and another. So you can never compare it. You can be happy with his corporate world. I am happy with my public works. Anyone else?
So this can be a personal question. I'm sorry, but see, sir, at some point you can't put your viewpoint, right? You cannot go according to what you like. You're forced, or there's somebody else working on you. So is it like at some point you've regretted on taking up this?
Regret per se, I've never felt that. Anyway, there are some moments when you'll be highly exhausted because you're not running your show. You have to listen to someone else. And his perspective and your perspective might clash, and your ideology and his ideology might clash. But whatever is said and done, we have something called as our rules book. We have something called as our conduct rules. We have something called as guided by the Constitution. So some things will be fixed. There might be difference in the way we do it, but the ultimate goal will be within this boundary of what we are doing. So we are always guided by that. So I don't think so that perspectives or individual opinions or their ideologies might differ, and some people might be prejudiced against you. You might be prejudiced against some people. So I don't think so that should affect you, because at the end of the day, you are guided by some or the other conduct rules or guidelines or rules and laws of the land. So I don't think so. There's no need for you to get demotivated or regret anything. At the end of the day, you are doing whatever is prescribed as per law. Okay, for example, I would like to tell this. Now there's a dilemma. Whether I should arrest that person or not. I know he has done that act out of compulsion, out of his situation. I know he has not deliberately done it. But whatever the laws of the land says, I have to act because that is what I have signed up for. So our personal opinions, prejudices, perspectives, ideology, that time it shouldn't matter. We should look beyond that and we should do our duty, whatever has been assigned to us.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, please tell me.
So, in a typical day for a civil servant, how can it be described, a typical day?
Mahesh, for a civil servant, there will be ample amount of pressure also. There will be ample amount of time also at times. He will be having his own social life also. He will be having his own family to handle also. It is always like everything he has to balance. I can't speak about others. I can speak about myself and about my job. At days there are so much stressed up issues that I don't even get to see my family. I don't even come home at times. I have to stay 24/7 outside because of some issues. But there are times when I will just stay at home because there's no important issues that day. Sometimes you might think, for example, I might think I can't have a open social life because everyone are just watching you, because I am a SP of a district. Everyone's eyes will be fixed upon me, and since I'm wearing an uniform, I will be easily identifiable in the society, and I can't do some things which I want to do openly because it won't be expected for me to do. So there are some kinds of restrictions also, but there are some kinds of openings for me where I can explore more. For example, coming to the same lockdown, when you all are sitting at house, I'm roaming around. So it is like that. It has given me some restrictions upon my social life, my personal life. At the same time, I have some other openings where I can explore. So for a civil servant, it is always a balance between the work and his personal life. And for a civil servant, it is very important to be alert. Yeah, you should be listening everything and react less, think more, and make sure he's not going to do anything stupid.
Okay, sir. So there are more questions on the chat box.
Yeah, I saw how to develop a mindset for writing the mains exam. As I told, first you need to have your basics very strong. So till you have your basics very strong, there's no point in answering that question. How to prepare ethics paper for UPSC? Ethics is all about self. I think Anish Bora has asked this question. See, ethics is all about what you are. You might feel something is right. You write that is right. For example, there might be a question. There will be two people. One is poor and one is rich. But at that situation, both are in a very bad state. They might be hunger or they might be hungry or whatever it is. Now the question will be like, you have only one piece of biscuit and you can't share it. You have to give it to one person. Whom do you will give? Will you give it to the poor person who is hungry or a rich person who is hungry? And you can't share it. If that is a kind of question they are asking, and what will you do? And then they will add to it. Even you are hungry and you are also with them. Will you eat the biscuit yourself, or will you give it to the poor person who is hungry, or will you give it to the rich person who is hungry? Then the concepts of deontology, teleology, utilitarianism, so many concepts will emerge. So I might write, I will eat because even I am hungry. My survival is more important. You might say it is wrong. No, there is nothing called as right or wrong. It is about how you justify things. Some people might write, the rich person who is hungry, who is about to die, if I don't, they will give it because they will create employment in future. He is a very a good entrepreneur. If I save him today, he might help 100 others tomorrow. He might feed 100 other hungry people tomorrow. So I will give the biscuit to him and save his life instead of mine and the poor person. Some other person might write, no, I will give it to the poor person. I have had a good times in my life. Even the rich guy had his own good times in life, but the poor person has always seen the poverty in life. He's always been demoralized in life. Let him have this biscuit and let him find some hope. Even that is right. So now the point is, for writing the answers in ethics, there is nothing called as this is right or this is wrong. It is your perspective and how you justify it that matters the most. I hope I have answered Anish Baura.
Yes, sir.
And
So is it true that not all papers are evaluated?
sorry,
Like
I
out of
didn't get.
all the papers. It is said that not all papers are evaluated, sir. Like there are so many people who try to write their exams, and not all of them are evaluated.
Every paper will be evaluated, Fatima. Each and every paper and each and every answer script would be evaluated. I don't think so they're going to leave anything, because they're going to give you marks at the end of the exam. Even if you have failed also, they will put your marks. Even if you have passed also, they will put your marks for you to see and compare and analyze. So I don't think so anything would be left out. And how to make notes from newspaper and when to start making newspaper notes. Anish, you can start reading newspaper right from today itself. I don't know whether you read today's newspaper. And making notes, I never used to make notes out of newspaper, because I used to just read and I used to just remember the main topics which I should read at the end of the month or end of the week or whenever it is required. And if you want to make notes and how to make, one thing I would like to say, if you are going to write the entire newspaper into some notebook, it is not going to help you. For example, if they have written anything about Swachh Bharat, you need to make notes like Swachh Bharat, salient points, 1 or 2, which will be very important for you to use in your answer writing. And as I said, every month some current affairs issues will be issued. You just can read that again and again, revise it again and again, because it will cover the entire current affairs topic. So now from how many years you have to read? So if you are appearing for the exams in 2022, you have to read 1 or 1.5 years prior to it, all the current affairs things for you to get updated. And you might ask, what about some other concepts like GST? It is happening in 2016. Whether how to go about it and all. See, these concepts and all, GST and all, will be covered upon in economics while you read economics. When you read the subject economics, the materials of economics, everything will be covered. Only thing you need to update in current affairs is what is happening today, and how can you add to the previous points the new things which is happening today. That is it. Okay, I think I had a very good, yeah, please tell me.
So one more question. So how do we select the subjects in IAS? Like there are so many subjects, and once when I attended like one session on this, the sir told me that anthropology is a very good subject to select because there aren't many books written on it. So is it like easier comparatively?
One minute. ಚಂದ್ರಪ್ಪ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಪ್ಪ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಫೋನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಡಿ, ನಾನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. See, now you have to select only optionals in your mains exams. So you're not going to select any other subject. Every other subject is common for everyone. Only your optional subject you have to select. See, I selected Kannada literature as my optional subject because I was very good in Kannada. I knew I can crack it in Kannada. And more than everything, I had this habit of reading a lot of novels, Kannada novels. So I was very confident, and I know there is that particular Kannada literature subject is scoring in mains. And I've seen at least 3-4 years prior results where Kannada literature is being doing good and it has got good marks for the candidates. And I also know that there's a lot of materials available in Kannada, lots of coaching centers available in Kannada for Kannada literature. So I took Kannada literature as my optional subject. My friend took anthropology because he felt anthropology is easier. There is ready materials available and there is ready coaching available. And he felt he is good in remembering things, remembering the words and all. So he selected that. And even anthropology was scoring. So how you select? You have to see whether the materials is readily available, and if you require some coaching, there are some coaching centers available. You have confidence in subject by just going through the syllabus of that subject, which you can again download from UPSC website. And when you see the syllabus, and if you are feeling like, okay, I can handle this subject, that is a third important criteria. And fourth and foremost will be like whether it is scoring. Now that scoring part is very important.
Sir, sir, you're not audible. Hello. Is it just for me or for everyone?
Yeah, there's some network issues, I guess.
Yeah, network.
We'll be winding up after he joins back. End of the session because of time constraint. Ma'am, is sir in the meeting or did he leave?
I guess there's some network issues there.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine. Any more questions? We'll take it. Otherwise, I have to go to a meeting too.
Yes, sir. We'll be winding up. But due to technical error, we couldn't introduce our guest speaker. So I'll ask Ms. Rose Tarakan, Secretary Criminology, to introduce our speaker.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rose Tarakan, and I've been given the privilege to introduce you to Mr. Srinivas Gowda. Mr. Srinivas Gowda is an IPS officer from the batch of 2016 and is currently the Superintendent of Police of the Hassan district. Prior to this, he was the Assistant Commissioner of Police in Mangalore. He secured the 105th rank in the All India UPS Civil Service Examination and got into the Karnataka cadre. After completing his probationary period in Vijayapur, Mr. Gowda also completed his Phase 2 training in Hyderabad. He has a bachelor's degree from the Bangalore Institute of Technology, where he did his engineering in electronics and communication. And Mr. Gowda is a native of Chennarayapatna. We would all like to thank you for this very extremely enlightening and informative session. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Gratitude turns what we have into enough. So I request Nikita Giri to express gratitude.
As G.B. Stern had once quoted, silent gratitude isn't much use. Hence, I am honored today to be giving the vote of thanks to end this session. First, I'd like to thank our, First, I'd like to thank our chief guest for taking time from his busy schedule to guide us today. I am thankful for your inspiring speech, sir. I'm sure all of us are more motivated and are equipped with more knowledge by the end of the session. I would also like to wholeheartedly thank our principal, Dr. Juliet CJ, for support and guidance. Thank you, ma'am, for assisting and encouraging all of us. I would also like to thank the Department of Criminology and IQSE for organizing this event. I would also like to especially thank Dr. Kiran Prasad, IT Coordinator, for providing technical assistance. And finally, I'd like to thank the UPSC aspirants for attending and making this an interactive session. I'm sure all of you have taken a lot from this session, just like I have. Thank you everyone once again for making this a success. Have a good day.
Thank you, Nikita. So we have come to the end of the session. So thank you, sir. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you.